Hi everyone. So first of all, I'd just like to thank you for coming here, everybody, today to listen to this address by Jim Boult, the QLDC Mayor. And we're grateful for your time, Jim. We know that it's been a really busy time for not just you, but the whole QLDC team and in fact the wider community. We're interested in hearing about the response that QLDC are doing and where you feel business has a part to play in that response. And I'm sure everyone will be really interested to hear that. Shortly, I'm going to hand over to Jim, and then we'll move to asking questions. And I'll read those questions out to you, Jim, and then we'll answer question and answer for about 20 minutes. We're also getting the chat stream. We'll save that as well. And any questions we don't get time to answer today, we will distribute a bit later on as well. Okay, Jim, I can hand over to you now. So take it away.
Well, thank you, Anna, and thank you everybody for coming on board to listen to this. It's not a formal presentation. It's just really, I've got a list of bullet points here on a page in front of me, and I'll talk to them as I see them. And as Anna has said, very happy to take some questions afterwards. You'll appreciate that this is a moving feast. You know, every time I look around, there's something different happens. And I had a rather large shock last night, and I'll come on to this a bit later. But when I found out that we had in excess of 2,000 migrant workers registered on the council's database looking for help, and so that's currently one of our big focuses. But as I said, I'll come back to that in a minute. You don't need me to tell you that the effect on our community economically will be enormous. And if the economic effect is enormous, then so will the social impact be. We are going through what you all understand is completely unprecedented times. Most of us who have been around the industry for a while understand that from time to time there is a downturn and things turn a bit south. We had that in '87 with the share market crash. We had that with various health issues such as SARS and the like. We had that in the global financial crisis, but nobody, I don't think, ever told us that our industry would simply be turned off. And that's what happened to us a couple of weeks ago. Of all the communities in New Zealand, I'm very sure that the impact on our community will be greater than anywhere else. You know, if you take other communities, they may have tourism as part of their economy. For us, it is our economy, of course backed up by construction, but construction largely follows tourism. So, yep, we have a major issue in front of us. So, all very well saying, goodness me, we have trouble. There was no point in simply saying, gee, what do we do now? We've got to do something about it. So what I want to talk to you about now is some of the things that we've got in mind going forward, as well as some of the challenges. One of the frequent questions I get is, how long is this going to last for? And look, I ask central government that, and the reality is it's really hard to put an estimate on it. But if you want my own best guess at this stage, we're in a 4-week lockdown period, as you understand at the present time. Tomorrow we'll be 2 weeks into that. Will we see the lockdown lifted at the end of this coming 2 weeks? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how well we have managed to contain coronavirus. And right now, our district is not the leading light, and well, it's the leading light for all the wrong reasons, because we have the highest instance of any community in New Zealand. I'm rather hopeful though that we are seeing the bell curve in operation here. Latter days of last week, we were seeing 5 to 7 new cases a day. Yesterday we had 2, the day before that we had 4, the day before we had 2. So perhaps we are getting on top of it. It just underscores, though, the need for us to continue this lockdown, because it will be a hell of a waste if we go through the economic pain and the social pain that we're going through on this, and simply waste it because we haven't contained the disease. The other burning question in terms of term that I get is, when are we likely to see international borders open? Again, don't know, but the feedback I get from government is that late this year might be a reasonable expectation. I really don't see it happening anywhere before that. There is the possibility of, if Australia looks like it's got it under control as well, of opening the Australian border. And that's really important to us, as you all know, because aside from Kiwis visiting our part of the world, Australians are the next largest by nationality. So really important for us for that. But in preparation for the period going forward, my advice would be to assume that the lockdown hopefully will be over in 2, 3, 4 maximum weeks. That will see us return to a degree of normality. It depends on whether we go back to level 1, 2 or 3 though. And of course, if we're still in level 3, that means that bars, restaurants, etc. are still closed. The return of internationals is unlikely to happen before ski season. We are going to see a domestic ski season this year. And again, looking forward, my best guess is that return to true significant numbers of internationals will happen around the ski season 2021. In the meantime, we're going to be largely dependent on the domestic market and perhaps some Australian visitors in the latter part of this year. The airport, as you know, is closed. There are no, well, when I say closed, there are no commercial flights going in and out of it. And simply the airlines have chosen to stop flying. And that's understandable. Nobody on the aeroplanes, when the lockdown finishes, they will let the market decide when they go back to business. Just remember though, only around 35% of our visitors actually come here by aeroplane, popular to what is, or the converse of what is popularly believed. Visitor mix, I got some useful stats out of DQ, which pretty much back up, thank you, Anne, pretty much back up what I understood. That is around 1/3 of our visitors are domestic, 2/3 international. So it's that 1/3 that we're going to concentrate on for a period of time. Interestingly enough, by seasonality, the domestics are far more even throughout the year than internationals. They come pretty much spread almost exactly quarter by quarter by quarter. Not quite sure why that is, but it's a good thing. Bear in mind also, as we start to come out of this, that New Zealanders aren't going to be going anywhere on holiday for a while. So having a holiday here for those who can actually afford to have a holiday could be a really good thing. Domestics spent 846 million in our district last year, compared to Australia at 489 million, US 259, China 193, UK 112, and they were the only markets above 100 million. So that domestic market will be really important for us going forward. It's probable that we'll want to see some stimulation in how we attract those visitors. So I'm really keen to see some good ideas on the table as we work our way through that. Can I talk here then about the issue I raised of migrant workers? So let's not forget that these folk helped Queenstown get to where it got to before this. Let's remember that they were the workers who worked in the bars and the restaurants and the hotels and the like, and were a very vital part of creating our industry. Most of them are out of work. We always estimated that there was somewhere in the order of 3,000 of them in the district at any one time. And if anything, I think we've decided we're a little bit conservative on that. Could be 3,500, could be 4,000. As I said last night, we found out we had 2,000 of these folk registered on our database. Currently, they're receiving a grant through civil defence of $240 per person to live on per week. And I guess if you, by the time you pay your rent, your food bill, top up your phone, etc., there's not a whole lot of change out of that. They're having to live pretty frugally. What's worrying me, though, is that we think, going by the numbers we're currently seeing, we'll end up with about 3,000 of these people on the list looking for assistance. And at $240 per person times 3,000, that's $750,000 per week that has to be found to fund the issue. So pop that in your mind. But also then pop into your mind the fact that after the lockdown finishes, the civil defence money goes away, and there will be no income for these people. In addition, at the present time, they cannot be evicted from their accommodation because of lockdown. After that finishes, they may well be evicted. I'm truly worried that we will have something approaching a humanitarian crisis on our plate. Around this, with folk unable to be fed and nowhere to live. So right now, a fair bit of my time is being spent convincing government that they need to pick this problem up. And a few people have said to me, well, pop them on planes and allow them to go back to their home countries. Well, that's fine, but unfortunately we don't have too many planes flying around the world. They don't have any money, so it would have to be funded by government. It is an option, and hopeful that some will be offered the opportunity to go back, but it is a real problem. Let's talk about more positive things. We've got a recovery to work our way through, and later today you will see an announcement by me that council is planning to form a couple of task forces, one around community recovery, that's ensuring that we have all the things in place to ensure that people have somewhere to go, notwithstanding the issues I've just mentioned on the migrants issue, that there is assistance for those who are suffering depression, mental issues, and that will be a factor out of this as well. But then there is the economic task force, and the economic task force, I am asking to consider several things. That is the position that we have now. What can we do right now while we're in lockdown? What are we going to do to turbo start a restart to get as many domestics here as we can? What we can do around stimulating the local economy in the meantime, and I'll come on to talk about that some more. We need to have some serious discussions now about diversification of our economy. We've been working on that steadily for a few years. We need to do more about it. But then also, what about the future shape of our tourism industry? It might be that tourism never quite goes back to the way it was before, and we might need to position ourselves a little differently. And one of the thoughts running through my head is, how do we make ourselves the most environmentally conscious tourism destination in the world? We're always going to be a long haul flight for people to get here, so what can we do to offset that? I mentioned the stimulation package. So we're working with government on trying to get some major capital works underway in the district. And this is about getting government to spend, and I don't exaggerate, hundreds of millions around here. So right now, We've got a workforce that is not able to work in the tourism industry that will come back, but they're not able to work there right now. The Inner Links project, can we get that underway? Project Manawa, which is the joint venture between Ngāi Tahu and Council around the civic administration building, the upgrade of the downtown area. Gee, I guess if there's a good time to do that, then it's right now while it's not heavily used. Getting some traction underway with some of the roundabouts and highways that we've got that you all know that are an issue. You know, the Lake Hayes on Ladies Mile one, for example. Getting some really good buy-in by government around that. Job training or job retraining will be a big issue on that. You know, but the simple issue is that if you can't drive a boat at the present time, perhaps you can drive a truck or a digger. If you can't wield a knife in a kitchen, perhaps you can swing a hammer on a building site. We have to do these things. If we can get some decent economic stimulus into the district, it will start money flowing around the place. It will kickstart the economy. We're very fortunate that we have strong relationships with government. I'm on the phone to Phil Twyford, Minister of Social Development and Minister of Transport pretty well every day at the present time, and they're buying into the issue. Final point I wanted to make is the efforts Council is going to keep costs down. I mentioned before that we are totally dependent really on the tourism industry, unlike most other districts. And so Council is impacted by this as well. Take, for example, the Shotover Jet concession. That's gone at the present time. Big hole in our revenue line. We have offered free rental in council premises for a number of our tenants. We'll work our way through how we gradually start getting rentals again, but we're conscious if there's no money coming in the door, there's not a lot of point in us expecting you to pay the rent. The big question people are asking us, what about rates? Well, because our income is severely decimated by the likes of the Shotover concession and other rentals that we get, taking a rates reduction really isn't an option, but we're trying very hard to simply reflect the rate of inflation in any increase. We'd previously said we were looking at 6 or 7%. That's off the table. We are working our way through the budget and hope to get some finality on that in the short term. And so in sum up, and I see I'm nicely onto my 20 minutes there, Erna, can I put a word in here for the Chamber? Really important at this time that we have a strong Chamber of Commerce who can lend their voice to Council's voice in talking to government to try to get the things done that we need to get done. So in their hour of need, they need your help as well. So keep it up. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. That's great. And thank you for your support of us. So I've got some questions here. So someone's asked, what are the details for the Civil Defence Grant?
The Civil Defence Grant is accessed by making application on the council website. There's a link there, register. We are looking for people to say who they are, where they're from, give us a bit of detail, and then we are warehousing the money and taking it from Civil Defence and paying it out locally here, and that will continue as long as that funding is available.
Okay, thank you. And we've got a question here from someone who said that it's a question around the migrant workers, so we'll start with that. There were approximately 2,000 people employed here before the lockdown. Why would their employers not keep them employed during this time so they would get the wage subsidy for 12 weeks?
Well, that's a question you'd have to ask individual employers, and it's not something I can answer, but I do have to point out that some people, some businesses have taken the contribution and not handed on to their employers, which is employees, which is incredibly disappointing.
I can actually comment on that. I had a meeting with the boarding house owners this morning. They've got 500 odd people, and most of their people had been given some degree of the grant that their employers had passed it on, coming to some extent. So I think there is a lot of employers doing the right thing, and it's still quite difficult. Okay, so heading down the list, question for Jim. Government is talking about wanting to start shovel-ready construction projects as soon as possible. Do we have some of these?
Okay, I think I touched on this in talking about the things that we can do. What's your definition of shovel-ready? Well, you know, have we got anything where we could start tomorrow? No, we don't. Have we got some stuff that we can start on in the relatively short term? Yes, we do. The downtown upgrade is a case in point. But if you take a project like Inner Links, which has got a cost of around 180 million, we think we can actually have activity happening on that before the end of the current calendar year.
Good. Okay, this one's an arts question. Being an environmental leader is no-brainer as we move forward. Can we incorporate more arts into this concept? This would appeal to a lot of people as well, and I'm going to add a bit to the end and actually be helpful in recovery, I think, in terms of people's mindset.
Absolutely. Really struck on a point that resonates with me. That's why we're very keen to build the new Performing Arts Centre as part of Project Manawa, and the Visual Arts Centre. How we go about funding that, I haven't figured that one out yet, but we're working our way through that. But look, yes, we are the adventure capital of the world, but then we have all these marvellous wineries and restaurants and good shopping, etc. Well, how would it be if we were known for our culture as well? Very strongly supportive of that.
Good. And how can this person wants to know how they can support or join the task force for either community or economic development. What can they do to actually be a part of that approach or that process?
So the process I'm going through at present is I'm asking a steering group of a few people to come up with suggestions of who would make up the two task forces. And we're looking for a wide variety of backgrounds, interests, skills, but people with proven history, track record in certain areas to work on that. It's voluntary, obviously. Nobody's going to get paid for it. But if you're interested in being part of it, please feel free to send me an email and I'll pass that through.
Thanks. And also, please feel free to join the Chamber community because we'll be actively involved with contributing to that group as it comes together with being in stakeholder engagement perspective. Could a central hospital be a chance for us to spread out, grow our income? Would we have a chance of getting a hospital here?
It's a question I've asked and been told, don't hold your breath. What I can tell you is the Southern Cross Hospital is alive and well, and I expect construction to start on that in the short term. But in terms of hospitals in the region, it's clear that the DHB and government are centred on the new Dunedin Hospital at present.
Yeah, that's a bit of a tall ask to build two hospitals, I think, down this way. Okay, how can we encourage landlords to be more understanding with their tenants? And it doesn't specify whether this is residential or commercial, but I think they go on to say this is going to be the difference between survival or not. So I'm thinking commercial. What's your view on commercial tenancies?
Look, I've spoken out on this, and I'll say it again. It depends on the individual circumstances, but if you are a commercial landlord and your tenant is simply not earning anything at the present time, unless they happen to have been putting all their profits in the bank and storing them up, they're going to have trouble paying the rent. And I think I reflect on the views of one very substantial landlord in town who told me that he would rather have a business that can start again after the lockdown than no tenant at all. And that is very much my message to landlords. That said, I mean, it's their business, and I'm not going to tell them how to run their business, but that is my strong view.
Yeah, that's a complex issue, isn't it? Because there's so many other people involved on both sides of that story. And,
yes, and debt servicing, etc., that they've got as well.
Yeah, that's right. So we do need we need them to be able to invest in the wider development of downtown areas and that sort of thing as well. The landlords
Correct.
to contribute to that process. Would council consider rolling out a rapid testing pilot so that our local economy could get back to working safely?
Not something I've given thought to. Of course, testing is not a council issue. That is a DHB issue. They do all the testing. At present, they tell me they are doing everything they can. But look, I'll take that on board.
Okay, this person asks, is there anything else in the pipeline from government with regard to extra stimulus package for local businesses? As you say, no real tourist volume until next winter. Most hospitality businesses won't have the capital to last that long, and the subsidy is only for 12 weeks. Do you have any heads up on what they might be thinking?
I've had a number of discussions with government on this, and clearly they're not telling me everything they're doing. However, I do have some comfort that they recognise that in the magic 12 weeks' time, this isn't going to come right, and that further stimulus will be available. So I'd have a bit of faith that there will be further assistance coming.
Okay, so now we're jumping, I know we're jumping about a bit here. Would you consider reopening the cabins at the campground for housing?
No, because we've sold the property, and you know, that is again is a project that we want to see carry on. I actually don't think housing is going to be the issue. It has been here for some time. In fact, I'm seeing signs outside properties that were previously on Airbnb, for example, now up for permanent rent. So I think there will be accommodation available.
Yeah, I tend to agree. If alert level, so this one, I don't know if you can answer this or not, it's quite specific. In alert level 3, what level of construction will be able to recommence? Is it still very limited, or will they be able to get working?
No, I think, don't hold me to this because I'd need to go and read the rule book again. But my understanding is that normal construction activity would be able to recommence, but of course restaurants, bars, etc. would not be able to reopen.
So the PM's urging businesses to start preparing for that sort of re-entry, I guess, into the different levels. Is there any other thing you would think that the business community might need to be aware as they start planning for the next 4 to 8 weeks?
Yeah, just be ready to start going again. You know, you just look. It's looking for enthusiasm here, but you know, you might be surprised how many locals are dead keen to go out and have a meal out again. Where I think we're all going to be thoroughly sick of being inside. I made the comment to my wife on the weekend that I can't wait until we can go to Akarua for breakfast on a Sunday morning again.
I know. Now, do you think that the likelihood of a lockdown becoming regionally focused is high? So do you think, given that we are we don't have a particularly good level of cases here, are we likely to be locked down longer than other parts of New Zealand?
It's a likelihood. I do think it's a real possibility that government will treat region by region, depending on where they are in terms of new cases. I come back to the comments I made before that if we can get those new cases down to a very low level, then we stand a good chance of not being treated in that fashion. So that's why I've been very vocal in criticism of people who are ignoring the lockdown. They just really are giving the middle finger to the rest of us, and you know, let's get this thing behind us so we can actually start in business again.
Okay, so this person wants to know, we're back to the rental and landlord situation, what types of support could be offered to landlords? Most who have already had large mortgages are also out of work and have dropped rents dramatically to assist tenants. So landlords, a lot of landlords are funding a lot of people's response, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And look, you know, this is not a one-way street, as I said before. A lot of sympathy for landlords as well, got mortgages, etc. I would hope that the banks are playing their part in this. I've spoken to the CEOs of two of the major banks, and they tell me the general message they're giving their staff is to look after businesses so they can recommence afterwards. And I really do hope that happens. Whether government come up with some further assistance, I think you need to wait and see on that.
Okay, thank you. So people are saying it's one of the opportunities they see for local employment that is focusing on rubbish cleanups and having a darn good cleanup around the district. They've suggested things like picking up litter and other, just general community civic pride stuff to have a bit of a tidy up. I'd add to that pulling broom out of your back garden and wildling pines. Is there anything that the council could do to, if not fund that activity, actually organise people to maybe start doing that sort of backyard cleanup?
Fabulous idea, and it's one that we're working on. We're asking government for some funding to help us get people voluntarily into pest control. As you say, broom, rabbits, stoats, etc. Let's look at our entire district and say, how do we put this time to good use and have a clean-up? Of course, we've got to be careful that we don't break the lockdown rules in doing it. But what an opportunity to put some time into getting rid of those fat, happy bunnies that are sitting on my front lawn.
I quite like to get rid of those wildling pines that are on my back lawn. That's what I've got them down, but I've got to get rid of them. That's quite like a bit of help with that one. Okay, so back to ski fields now. Will the ski fields be open for the season, and all of them? And so you've said it's already going to be a domestic market. So tell me a bit more about the domestic ski season, how you see that might play out.
Okay, so look, this will depend on how long the lockdown goes for, and obviously I can't speak for the ski field operators, although I obviously have good knowledge of one of them. I think what's likely to happen is that some fields will open, perhaps others won't. And it will be very much based on a domestic ski season, perhaps locals and maybe the rest of the South Island, but I perhaps wouldn't see too many people coming from too much further afield. So I would expect the ski field operators, unless there's a big change in the short term, concentrating on locals and offering limited services in the current season.
Okay. Okay, so we're going into the environmental and some vision type questions now. So council's picture of what you're trying to achieve during this time, and when thinking about that environmentally with climate change and community orientated goals. And then the subsequent question to that is, how much of the vision of Vision 2050 guiding council's picture of what it's hoping to achieve environmentally and change-wise since now? How do you think you can incorporate that into our recovery?
Oh, look, 2050 is Vision 2050 is unchanged. And funnily enough, I pulled the document out and had another read of it last night. That's exactly where we're going to. And if anything, this perhaps in an odd way may assist our focus to understand where we need to get to on it. So no change to that whatsoever.
Okay. Okay, so after lockdown, domestic tourism will be a big priority. Has any thought been given to improving transport links to Wanaka, Cromwell, etc., to encourage transport? And I would add to that, since we're going to have less tourists, locals are going to be much more likely to get back in private vehicles again, because the roads are going to be less busy, and we've made some really good progress of people getting out of private vehicles. How do we keep that going?
So, for those of you who don't know, before we introduced the $2 bus, we had about 30,000 people a month travelling on public transport. That's gone to close to 140,000 people a month. This is prior to the lockdown, particularly with the new services out of Lake Hayes Estate and shot over country. That was a real boost to numbers. Clearly, that's going to take a big dent because some of those travelling on the $2 bus were tourists. We won't be seeing them. But one of the pieces of work we had in front of us before all this happened was $2 bus, well, public transport services between Cromwell and Queenstown and Wanaka and Queenstown, and also the introduction of public transport in Wanaka itself. Now, look, I've got to be honest with you and tell you that I just don't know where that is at the present time. It'll depend on demand, etc. Something we're going to have a look at. But it's really important that we don't just take our foot off the accelerator on some of these really good projects that we're working on. This is a moment in time. It'll pass. We will get beyond this, and it would be a shame to have to go back to square one on a whole lot of these things that we've been thinking about.
Absolutely. Has there been any more advice, just moving away from transport again, has there been any more advice on immigration changing the conditions of the visas so that people can get work elsewhere, the redeployment one? I know Sharon at Economic Development's working on that at Council. Where are we at be able to get people, when the lockdown finishes, moved on to some other place for work?
Bit frustrated about that. Thursday before, I spoke with the Minister of Immigration and got an undertaking that would be resolved in the very short term. I'm still waiting for it. So that's something we're pushing hard for. I have spoken to the industry, the viticulture, horticulture industry in our part of the world. Most of them seem to have adequate people to fill their jobs at present, but I do know there are jobs available up in the North Island. How we get people up there, I haven't figured that one out yet either, but if there were jobs up there, we would find a way to get people there. I did have one senior politician, though, say to me, I wouldn't get too wound up in the conditions around visas if there's jobs available.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, hopefully that's exactly right. Okay, so we're up. We've sort of hit our time now, Jim, I think. And thank you very much. One person here has asked for the poem. I noticed this in the weekend actually, as I was walking about the place, that people it was nice weather and they'd got into the garden and wanting to take away their cleanup waste. So they're wanting to get the refuse centre reopened. What's the possibility? I would say that would be breaking the lockdown rules.
That would definitely be breaking the lockdown rules. I'm afraid you're going to have to stockpile it and take it there post lockdown.
Yes, it's time to learn to compost. Yes, so other than that, I'd just like to remind everybody once again that if your question wasn't answered, our apologies. We will be downloading the questions and we will attempt to answer those. There's a few there that are quite specific that we have got the answers to, so we'll get those out for you. And Jim, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for everyone for attending.
Thank you, Anna.
350 people, so that was a good effort. Yes, so sorry for the wobbly start, but it was a good effort. Thank you very much.
That's a good crowd. Well done. Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated.
Okay, thanks for your time, everyone. Bye.
Bye.